Hello everyone and welcome to the online learning classes of English for class 12 CBSE students. I'm Ms. Anita Rawat. Today in this video I'll be discussing the main points of the very first story from your textbook Flamingo entitled The Last Lesson by Alphonse Daudet. So first of all, let me tell you about the author. Alphonse Daudet was a great French writer. He was born on 13th May 1840 in Nimes, France, and he died on 16 December 1897 at the age of 56 in Paris, France. He started his career as a teacher and later on he shifted to journalism. I would like to tell you one very special thing about him, that he wrote his first novel when he was only 14 years old. Later on, he earned a great name as a reputed novelist, short story writer, playwright, and poet. Now let me tell you about the historical background of the story, which is very important for all of you to understand if you want to feel the essence of the story. The story is set in the days of Franco-Prussian War, which was fought in 1870 and 1871. In this war, on the one side, there was the country France, and on the other side, there was Prussia. Prussia then consisted of Germany, Poland, and some parts of Austria. In this war, France was defeated, and as a result, France lost its two districts named Alsace and Lorraine. The Prussians behaved very cruelly and they tried to rule not only over the territory of France but also over the minds and hearts of the people. As you see in the story, that as soon as Prussia annexed Alsace and Lorraine districts of France, an order was sent from Berlin to teach only German language in the schools of these two districts. Thus, their language French was snatched from them, and they tried to snatch not only their political freedom but also their identity. Here you can see some pictures of Franco-Prussian War. Now let's talk about the theme. The main theme of the story is linguistic chauvinism. Linguistic chauvinism means a strong and aggressive belief about one's language being superior. We show linguistic chauvinism when we feel that our language is superior and we find other languages inferior and we start disrespecting them. In the story, Germans showed this linguistic chauvinism by snatching the mother tongue of people of Alsace and Lorraine and by imposing their language on them, thus snatching their identity. The story also speaks about brutality of war, making man insensitive to human feelings and emotions. A sub-theme also runs through the story, and this sub-theme is about procrastination. It's about human tendency to postpone the learning, thinking there is plenty of time. As in the story, the people of Alsace realized their mistake of not giving due importance to the study of French language only when suddenly German language was imposed on them. And then it was too late for them to learn. Now see the setting of the story. The story is taking place in one of the schools in Alsace district of France, which was annexed by Prussia in Franco-Prussian War. Here you'll find M. Hamel giving his last lesson in the class. Now see the characters. There are two main characters in the story, Monsieur Hamel and Frange. Monsieur Hamel was a dedicated French language teacher in a school in Alsace district of France who had given 40 years of meritorious services to his school students and language. Franz was a student who never liked his school and studies, but underwent a big change on hearing the order from Berlin and felt repentant for neglecting his lessons. You'll also find mention of some villagers in the story, like Old Hauser, former mayor, former postmaster, and many others. Now let's see the incidents from the story. As the story begins, we find Franz going to school. He was afraid of going to school that day for two reasons. He was late for school and he wasn't prepared with his lesson on participles. And the teacher had to ask questions from this topic. He got tempted by so many things outside the school, like warm and pleasant weather, chirping of birds, and he also enjoyed watching Prussian soldiers drilling. For a moment, he thought not going to school, but then he resisted the temptations and he ran to school hurriedly. On the way, he saw a lot of crowd outside the bulletin board of the town hall. He didn't stop there to read the news because he expected a bad news, as was the scene for 2 years as the war was going on there. He was also interrupted by the blacksmith Vostre, who asked him not to run so fast as there was plenty of time for him to go to school. Franz was already late for school and he thought that the blacksmith was making fun of him. So he didn't stay there and he ran towards the school. As soon as he stepped in, he found school completely different and he noticed many unusual changes there. He noticed that everything was still and as quiet as Sunday morning. The usual hustle, bustle, noise, everything was missing that day. And when he reached his classroom, he found that all the classmates had already seated there. He noticed one change in the teacher as well. That day, M. Hamel was excessively kind and polite. He didn't scold Franz for coming late. Instead, very kindly, he welcomed him to his class. Then Franz looked at the teacher and noticed that he was wearing his special dress that he used to wear on special days. He was wearing a beautiful green coat, frilled shirt, and an embroidered black silk cap. Moreover, school looked so strange and serious. Then, the biggest change that he noticed, he found that on the last benches in the classroom, the villagers were sitting. Franz was wondering what must be the reason for these changes. And he didn't have to wait for long, as very soon M. Hamel made an announcement. He informed them that it was their last lesson in French. An order had come from Berlin to teach only German language in schools of Alsace and Lorraine. He also informed them that a new German teacher would join school the next day. Now see the reaction of Franz. A grim realization dawned on him. This announcement of M. Hamel felt like a thunderclap for him. He found this announcement very shocking. And a sea change came on him. He felt sorry for wasting his time and missing his school. He also changed his attitude towards books completely. Earlier, he found books burdensome and nuisance. But now the same books seemed to him like old friends that he didn't want to part with, that he didn't want to get separated from. He forgot all about the strict and cranky nature of M. Hamel. And now he had only and only sympathy and respect for him. Now it also became clear to him that why there was so much crowd outside the bulletin board, and now he also understood the remark made by the blacksmith. He also knew the reason now for the presence of villagers in the classroom. The villagers were present there to thank M. Hamel for his meritorious services of 40 years for French language. They were there to show their respect for their country, which was no longer theirs. They were also feeling remorseful. They were all repentant for not having gone to school more often and for neglecting their learning. After this, M. Hamel started his last class. At the very outset, he asked Franz to recite the rules of participles, which Franz could not do despite making best possible efforts, because actually he wasn't ready with that. He felt very guilty, and this guilt of Franz could easily be felt by the teacher M. Hamel. So he didn't scold him. And he didn't blame Franz for this poor learning and for neglecting his learning of French language. First of all, M. Hamel blamed the habit of people of Alsace. People of Alsace, they were procrastinators. They had a habit of postponing learning till the next day. And same thing they did with the learning of French language. Not only this, M. Hamel also blamed the parents for sending children to work on farms and at mills to earn more money instead of sending them to school. And like a very good human being, he took the blame on himself also. How he took the blame on himself? He said that many times he sent children to water his plants instead of making them attend the class. And sometimes he gave them a holiday whenever he wanted to enjoy fishing. After this, M. Hamel appreciated French language by calling it the most beautiful, most logical, and clearest language. So, very generously, he eulogized French language and showed his respect to his language. He also asked all present to not to forget their language as it was their key to freedom. Then he taught them a lesson in grammar, and that day he explained everything with so much patience that Franz and other students understood each and everything taught by him. After that, he gave them a lesson in writing. Meanwhile, Franz heard cooing sound of some pigeons coming from the roof. And a very strange idea and a very strange thought came to his mind, and he thought, if the cruel Germans would impose their language on these birds too, would they ask these birds also to coo in German language? That shows the brutality of war children. So that day, whatever was taught by M. Hamel, it was received very attentively by all the students. And Franz was thinking all the time about faithful services of 40 years that M. Hamel offered to that school. At the end, M. Hamel delivered his last lesson on history, and that made everyone present there very emotional, and it filled all of them with patriotism. Everyone got very emotional as the last lesson was coming to an end and there were tears in their eyes. And as the church clock struck 12, M. Hamel became very emotional. He was overwhelmed with these emotions. And he wrote on the board in big letters, "We love France." It means, "Long live France." And then he couldn't speak anything. And he dismissed the class only by making a gesture with his hand. So here this emotional story comes to an end, children, and I'm sure you must have understood the story. This story gives us very good messages. The very first message is respect your mother tongue without disrespecting other languages. Means you should have all the respect for your language, but you should also have respect for the other languages. And second message that we get out of this message is, do not be a procrastinator. Do not postpone things till the next day, as tomorrow never comes. So that's all from my side, children. Thank you.